Good morning. My name is Simon Miller from the LaRouche organization, here today for your daily video update. Today is Wednesday, September 4th, 2024, and there are a series of developments that I hope to portray to you. And what I want to focus on today is agape. It is love for the one that is all. It is love for your fellow man as if they were yourself, or as if they were your brother. And this is probably a principle that you've heard of, whether you read through the Bible, whether you read through classical Greek works, whether you're reading through works of philosophy. You've probably heard this term, whether it's as love, whether it's as charity, whether it's as its initial Greek use, agape. But there's something very powerful about this form, because it's not simply emotional. It's not sentimental. It's not that I love you because I like you. Like is a sentiment, as Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. once said. Liking someone is a sentiment, but love, agape, is much more profound than that. It's a mental capability of humankind, a unique one. And it is displayed through developments that are occurring across the planet right now, right as we speak. Because over the last few days, there have begun two major cooperation meetings, two major meetings between dozens of countries outside of the periphery of the Western Empire, of the Anglo-American world empire. And what those are is the FOCAC meeting, the Forum on China-Africa Cooperation in Beijing, which began on the 2nd, and the Eastern Economic Forum, which begins today, I believe. And these two forums, that's in Vladivostok, by the way, in Russia. So these two forums, they represent the development of agape to the highest level of statecraft. They represent the culmination of the work of everybody who is trying to bring to the fore agape, to say, I love my fellow man. I love my fellow man. So therefore, I will cooperate with him. I will build with him. I won't kill him. I won't bomb him. I will build with him. And that's why Xi Jinping, who, if you go to the New York Post or New York Times or the Washington Post or every other Western media outlet, especially the Epoch Times, the Falun Gong run publication, Xi Jinping is one of the most evil men in the world. He's a dictator, he's a communist, he's this and that, he's a fascist, he's a Nazi, but he's none of those things. Xi Jinping is extending his hand to 15 plus African leaders who met with him directly at the Forum on China-Africa Cooperation. Every nation in Africa, except for a small handful, I believe 50 out of 54, showed up to Beijing to develop increased cooperation, to develop trade ties, to develop economic ties, but also to develop cultural ties, to reach out and say, we are the same, you and I. China and Africa are both composed of humans. And this is the same outlook we need in the West. And this is the same outlook they have in Russia when they're having the Eastern Economic Forum, which is an even more large, comprehensive forum between hundreds of countries, between dozens of countries, thousands of participants who are meeting in Vladivostok, Russia, for the explicit purpose of not only expanding economic ties, but very explicitly talking about culture, talking about humanity, talking about technological development, talking about things that make humanity unique, uniquely able to change the world around them in favor of themselves and in favor of their fellow man. I don't believe that these developments just mean that China and Russia are trying to control the world. I don't believe these are some extension of multipolarity. Because multipolarity as a descriptive term is useful. It means there's more than one pole. It's not just a hegemonic world order. But as a substantive structure for a new world order, it doesn't work. The new international security and development architecture that is already coming into being is not simply based on multipolarity. It's not based on different poles forming that counteract the hegemonic pole. It's not based on some hegemonic geopolitical game. What we're talking about here is an entirely new outlook on humanity, an entirely new outlook on what international relations even is. Is international relations when you simply develop trade ties to extract from Africa, like the British Empire and the French Empire and the Dutch did? Or is geopolitics when you recognize the humanity in your fellow man? You say, you and I are the same. We both are built in the image of God. We're both, within us, we have the ability to understand and change the world around us, to develop new technologies that expand our understanding of the universe, but also expand our ability to produce more population and produce more for more people at a cheaper cost and in a more efficient way. Because to me, that is a much more profound form of not only new global structures, but also a much more profound human love. It is agape. So when you look at Xi Jinping meeting with African leaders, extending his hand for cultural, economic, and political cooperation, when you look at Russian President Vladimir Putin talking with heads of state from around the world, all of them meeting together to talk about high technological development, meeting to talk about trade corridors, when you have leaders from India, when you have leaders from Turkey, when you have leaders from countries that have been considered to be part of the imperial core, part of the attack on new humanity. When you have them coming together to talk about trade and culture, when you have them coming together to talk about how they're going to move into the future together based on cooperation, that's something more profound than multipolarity. So while here in the West, you have the United States seizing a Venezuelan plane, just stealing their plane because they're avoiding sanctions. While you have here in the West a continued support for the genocide going on against Palestinians via Israel. When you have a continued push into Russian territory with the Kursk offensive, which has completely and utterly failed, and it hasn't provoked the reaction they wished because the Russians are displaying a great amount of restraint. But nonetheless, when you have this continual push towards nuclear war and financial domination in the West, what you see in the East is an expression of the love of humanity. It's an expression of an escape from the geopolitical game that the West is playing and wants the East to play. So all of this being said, I know this update was quite a bit shorter than my past updates, but given the circumstances, I hope you'll appreciate my attempts to explain these things to you. But since I'm not able to go into full depth on these things, I highly recommend you go to EIR.news, subscribe to the Executive Intelligence Review, because I sourced all this information from there, and it will inspire you to love humanity even more than you love it already. Beyond that, there are two other things that you should do. You should join Harley, Schlanger, and Helga Zepp-LaRouche's weekly webcast today at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. There you can ask questions and you can hear from Helga Zepp-LaRouche and Harley Schlanger about probably similar strategic changes to what you've heard here or what you hear from Harley's show ordinarily. And finally, please join us this Friday, again at 11 a.m. Eastern Time, for the International Peace Coalition's 66th consecutive meeting, where you will hear from peace activists, intelligence officials, former statesmen from around the world who can give you a better understanding of the strategic situation in various different countries. So that is all I have for you today. Again, join the webcast with Helga Zepp-LaRouche and Harley Schlanger today at 11. Thank you.